Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into the very deep, very murky, and dare I say, spectacularly boring waters of Greek mythology, from its absolute cosmic beginnings all the way through to its lingering whispers in modern culture. Imagine for a moment you're not in your cozy bed, perhaps with the soft glow of a nightlight, but instead, you are floating in an endless, formless void. There's no up, no down, just an infinite expanse of nothing. It's not peaceful, not chaotic, just there. You can almost feel the primordial silence pressing in, a silence so profound it hums with the promise of everything and nothing. This isn't just a story, it's the very fabric of existence being woven around you, thread by thread. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this journey awake. Your eyelids are already feeling a bit heavy, aren't they? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling particularly brave, let me know your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're drifting in the absolute zero point of everything, a place so abstract it barely registers as a concept. This is chaos, the yawning chasm from which all else sprang forth. It wasn't just empty space. It was a state of being, a primordial void that held the potential for everything that would ever exist. Think of it less as a black hole and more as a cosmic primordial soup, swirling with unformed possibilities. From this vast, indistinct nothingness, the very first entities, the primordial deities, began to emerge. You don't see them burst forth in a flash of light, but rather, they coalesce, almost imperceptibly, like fog forming on a still morning. First came Gaia, the earth. You can feel her solidifying beneath you, a vast, nurturing presence. She is the ground you walk on, the mountains that scrape the sky, the fertile plains that stretch to the horizon. She isn't just a planet. She is the earth, a conscious entity. Then, simultaneously, Tartarus arises, the deep, dark abyss beneath the earth. This isn't just an underworld. It's a terrifying prison, a place of profound darkness and despair, even more ancient and fundamental than Hades' later domain. Imagine a pit so deep, so devoid of light, that the very thought of it makes your breath catch. As if drawn by some unseen force, Eros appears next. And before you conjure images of a cherubic Cupid, understand that this Eros is something far more fundamental. The irresistible urge, the primordial force of attraction, of desire, of procreation that drives all creation. He is the very spark that allows things to come together, to form, to be. Without Eros, there would be no coupling, no children, no further development. He's essentially the cosmic glue. Historians still argue whether Eros was a direct emanation of chaos or a later, albeit still ancient, force. It's one of those delightful scholarly rabbit holes, isn't it? Then came Nyx, the night, a cloak of impenetrable darkness that blankets the world. And from Nyx, without a partner, came Ether, the upper air, the bright, pure air of the gods, and Hemera, the day. You can almost feel the rhythm of this earliest cosmos establishing itself, the endless cycle of light and dark, a primal breathing of the universe. This period is so foundational, so incredibly basic, that it makes you appreciate how much scaffolding was needed before anything truly interesting could happen. It's like watching paint dry, if the paint was the universe itself. Gaia, feeling lonely perhaps, or simply following the irresistible urge instilled by Eros, brought forth her own children. First, she birthed Uranus, the starry sky, equal to herself in size, so that he might cover her completely. You can envision him arching over her, a vast dome sparkling with nascent stars. Then came Urea, the mountains, great craggy peaks that rose from her form, and Pontus, the sea, the churning, dark waters. It's a bit like a cosmic self-portrait, isn't it? She made the sky, the landforms, and the oceans all from herself. And the most mainstream historical fact here is that this very concept of a cosmic egg or a primordial void giving birth to everything is a recurring theme across many ancient mythologies, not just Greek. It's almost as if everyone universally agreed that something had to come from nothing. Uranus, the sky, then lay with Gaia, the earth, and their union was incredibly prolific, but also, as you'll soon see, incredibly problematic. Their first children were the mighty Titans, 12 enormous, powerful beings, 6 male and 6 female. They weren't quite gods as we might imagine them. They were more elemental, more raw, embodiments of powerful natural forces. Imagine beings so vast, so imposing, that they made mountains look like pebbles. You are still there, in the hazy, primeval past, as the first generation of Titans arrives, filling the vastness between Gaia and Uranus. Their names echo through time. Oceanus, embodying the mighty world-encircling river. Ceus, the Titan of intelligence and the axis of heaven. Crius, associated with flocks and constellations. Hyperion, the lofty one, father of the sun, moon, and dawn. Iapetus, the piercer, father of many significant figures like Prometheus. And finally, Cronus, the youngest and most ambitious, often associated with time itself. Among the females, you have Thea, goddess of sight and bright light. Rhea, mother of the Olympian gods. Themis, goddess of divine law and justice. Mnemosyne, the embodiment of memory. Phoebe, associated with bright intellect and prophecy. And Tethys, goddess of the primeval fresh waters, Oceanus's consort. But Uranus, despite his vastness and power, was not a loving father. In fact, he was pretty terrible. He feared his children, particularly the next set Gaia bore him. The Cyclopes, gigantic one-eyed beings who were master craftsmen, and the terrifying Cinemanes, or hundred-handers, monstrous creatures with 50 heads and 100 arms each. You can practically hear Gaia's groans of agony as Uranus, disgusted by their appearance and perhaps terrified of their immense power, forcibly pushed them back into her womb, trapping them within the earth. Imagine the sheer claustrophobia, the suffocating pressure of being eternally confined in the very heart of the world you were born from. This act was one of supreme cruelty and a serious breach of parental etiquette. If there was a cosmic CPS, Uranus would have been in a lot of trouble. Gaia, understandably, was not amused. Her immense body was racked with pain from the internal imprisonment of her children. She yearned for vengeance, for liberation. So, she began to plot. You can almost see her, the vast earth itself, stirring with resentment and a cunning resolve. She fashioned a great flint sickle, a curved, razor-sharp blade, and called upon her Titan children to help her exact retribution against their tyrannical father. Most of the Titans, though powerful, were too afraid of Uranus to challenge him. But Cronus, the youngest, was made of sterner stuff. He was bold, cunning, and resentful of his father's tyranny. He alone answered his mother's call. You watch as he takes the formidable sickle, his expression grim and determined. It's a classic family drama, really, just on a cosmic scale, with slightly sharper garden tools. As Uranus came to lie with Gaia that night, covering her completely, as was his custom, Cronus lay in wait. With a swift, brutal strike, he castrated his father. You wince at the thought, the primordial pain echoing through the nascent cosmos. The drops of blood that fell onto Gaia, the earth, gave birth to even more terrifying beings. The Erinyes, or Furies, vengeful deities who pursued those guilty of patricide and other heinous crimes. The Gigantes, giants, enormous, powerful beings, and the Meliae, ash tree nymphs. And in a quirky tidbit, from the foam created when Uranus's severed genitals fell into the sea, a goddess of beauty, Aphrodite, would later emerge. Talk about an unconventional birth story. It just goes to show, even in cosmic horror, there's always room for a little beauty to bloom from the most unexpected sources. With Uranus overthrown, literally dismembered, and cast away, Cronus ascended to power. He released his siblings from Tartarus, and the golden age of the Titans began. Cronus married his sister, Rhea, and they became the new rulers of the cosmos. But the cycle of fear and tyranny, as historians still argue whether it was truly inevitable or a learned behavior, was far from broken. Cronus, having overthrown his own father, was haunted by a prophecy that he too would be overthrown by one of his own children. It's a common theme in Greek mythology, this relentless generational conflict. The more things change, the more they stay, horrifyingly similar. And so, to prevent this prophecy from coming true, Cronus adopted an even more gruesome tactic than his father. As each of his children was born to Rhea, he would immediately devour them whole. You can imagine Rhea's terror and despair with each birth, watching her babies disappear into the gaping maw of her husband. It's a chilling, grotesque image, a loving mother powerless to protect her offspring from their terrifying, all-consuming father. It makes you almost miss the simplicity of being stuck inside the earth. You are now bearing witness to a horrifying pattern. Rhea, a mother consumed by grief and despair, watches helplessly as her husband, Cronus, swallows their children one by one. Her firstborn, Hestia, goddess of the hearth, then Demeter, goddess of the harvest, Hera, queen of the gods, Hades, lord of the underworld, and Poseidon, god of the sea, all vanish into his insatiable gullet. Imagine the sheer terror in Rhea's eyes, the crushing sorrow that must have weighed down the very fabric of existence with each swallowed child. It's a tragedy on a cosmic scale, a mother's worst nightmare playing out repeatedly, forever scarring the early divine lineage. This cycle of parental terror and filial usurpation is a central theme, highlighting a fear of being overthrown that seems to plague these ancient, powerful beings. But even a goddess of Rhea's endurance has her limits. When she became pregnant with her sixth child, she decided enough was enough. She had to save this one, no matter the cost. She appealed to her parents, Gaia and Uranus, for help, desperate to break the grim cycle. And, in a rare moment of familial intervention, considering Uranus's usual hands-off, or rather, hands-in-womb approach, they advised her on a plan. You watch as Rhea, with a cunning born of desperation, prepares for the birth of her final child. She travels to a secret location. Some accounts say it was the island of Crete, others Mount Lycaeus in Arcadia. The exact location is one of those delightful scholarly debates. Historians still argue whether the birth on Crete or in Arcadia holds more symbolic weight for the burgeoning Olympian cults. What matters is the secrecy. This birth must be hidden from Cronus. When the child, a male, is born, Rhea names him Zeus. You can almost feel the tremor of destiny in the air with that name. Instead of presenting the newborn to Cronus, Rhea swiftly wraps a stone in swaddling clothes, disguising it to look exactly like an infant. Cronus, unsuspecting in his paranoia, or perhaps simply too eager to complete his ritualistic consumption, swallows the stone whole, believing he has consumed his final threat. You can almost hear his satisfied burp, unaware of the cosmic deception that has just taken place. Baby Zeus is then spirited away to a secluded spot, often said to be a cave on Mount Ida in Crete. There, he is raised in absolute secrecy, far from his terrifying father. You see the nymphs, especially Adrastea and Ida, tending to him, feeding him on the milk of the goat Amalthea. Imagine this divine infant, growing up in a hidden grotto, surrounded by the gentle bleating of a magical goat and the hushed whispers of caring nymphs. It's a stark contrast to the tumultuous, terrifying childhoods of his older siblings, now trapped within their father's stomach. The Curetes, a group of young, armed dancers, further ensure Zeus's safety. When the infant Zeus would cry, they would bang their spears against their shields, creating a deafening clamor that would drown out his cries, preventing Cronus from hearing him from afar. It's an ingenious, if slightly theatrical, method of child rearing, ensuring the future king of the gods remains hidden until the appointed time. This practical detail, the loud noise-to-mass cries, is a fascinating glimpse into the logistical challenges of raising a secret divine baby. It's not just magical intervention. There's some good old-fashioned noise canceling going on. Zeus grows rapidly, nurtured by the land and the magical sustenance. He absorbs strength and wisdom, becoming a powerful young god, keenly aware of his lineage and the terrible fate that befell his siblings. He understands his destiny, to confront his father, free his brothers and sisters, and bring an end to the tyrannical rule of the Titans. The sense of impending conflict hangs heavy in the air. This period of Zeus's hidden youth is crucial. It allows him to develop his strength and cunning without the direct oppressive presence of Cronus, preparing him for the monumental task ahead. It's like a divine training montage, but with more goats and fewer barbells. The most mainstream historical fact here is that the motif of a powerful ruler fearing an heir and attempting to eliminate them is incredibly common across numerous mythologies and even historical accounts, underscoring a universal human and divine fear of losing power. You are now at the precipice of a cosmic showdown, feeling the tension build as Zeus, now a formidable young god, prepares to confront his tyrannical father. He knows he can't simply walk up to Cronus and demand his siblings back. This isn't a polite family reunion. It's a divine intervention of the highest order. He needs a strategy, and perhaps a little outside help. You can almost feel the whispers of defiance rippling through the heavens. His first step is to secure an ally. He seeks out Métis, the goddess of cunning and wisdom, an Oceanid. She's not one for direct confrontation, but her mind is sharper than any blade. She understands the intricacies of the cosmos and, crucially, how to manipulate Cronus's insatiable appetite. Métis devises a powerful emetic potion, a concoction designed to make Cronus disgorge his swallowed children. Imagine the planning involved, gathering obscure divine ingredients, brewing it under specific celestial alignments. It's like a magical episode of Master Chef, but with infinitely higher stakes. Zeus, often disguised, cleverly infiltrates Cronus's palace, perhaps as a cupbearer or a new servant. He offers Cronus the potent drink, presenting it as a special, invigorating concoction. Cronus, unsuspecting and perhaps a little too confident in his invulnerability, eagerly consumes it. You can almost see the satisfaction on his face turning to confusion, then discomfort, and finally, violent nausea. It's a moment of grim satisfaction for you, witnessing the devourer being forced to undo his heinous acts. With a series of mighty retches, Cronus begins to regurgitate his swallowed children, along with the stone he had consumed in Zeus's place. Out first comes the stone, then, in reverse order of consumption, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. Imagine the scene: fully grown gods and goddesses emerging, disoriented and perhaps a little green around the gills, from their father's stomach. It's not a gentle rebirth, it's a messy, undignified expulsion. But they are free, and perhaps a little traumatized, which, honestly, is understandable. This dramatic regurgitation is a mainstream historical fact central to the myth, a truly unique method of liberation. Reunited with his siblings, Zeus rallies them against Cronus and the other Titans. This isn't just a family quarrel. This is the Titanomachy, the great war for cosmic supremacy, a conflict that would rage for 10 long years. You are now plunged into an epic struggle that shakes the very foundations of the universe. The sky is alight with lightning, the earth trembles with thunder, and the oceans churn with divine fury. It's not a war fought with armies and tactics as we know them, but with raw, elemental power. The Titans, led by Cronus, establish their stronghold on Mount Othrys. The Olympians, as Zeus and his siblings are now called, make their base on Mount Olympus. You can picture the two towering peaks, facing each other across a vast battlefield, crackling with energy. The scale of this war is almost unfathomable. Mountains are hurled, rivers are diverted, and the very fabric of reality seems to groan under the strain. It's a bit like a cosmic game of dodgeball, where the balls are entire landmasses. Realizing that direct strength might not be enough, Zeus employs strategy. He descends into Tartarus, the deep, dark prison where Aurenas had confined the Cyclopes and the Cenomanes. He frees them, earning their eternal gratitude and, crucially, their powerful assistance. The Cyclopes, master craftsmen, forge incredible weapons for the Olympians. Zeus receives the Thunderbolt, a weapon of unparalleled destructive power. Poseidon gains the Trident, which can command the seas and shake the earth. And Hades is given the Helm of Darkness, which renders its wearer invisible. These are not mere tools. They are extensions of divine will, capable of reshaping the cosmos. It's a quirky tidbit that a god known for wisdom and cunning would seek out the very creatures his oppressive father feared, turning them into his greatest assets. The Cenomanes, with their 50 heads and 100 arms, are unleashed upon the Titans. They can hurl massive boulders with terrifying speed and precision, raining down destruction on Mount Othrys. The sheer power of these liberated beings turns the tide. Historians still argue whether the war was primarily a display of physical might or a symbolic representation of the triumph of order over chaos. Regardless, the impact was undeniable. With the thunderbolts flashing, the trident shaking the earth, and hundreds of arms flinging mountains, the Olympians gained the upper hand. The roar of the battle is deafening, a symphony of destruction and divine power. You are still immersed in the deafening cacophony of the Titanomachy, the cosmic war for dominance. The sky above Mount Olympus crackles with Zeus's thunderbolts, each strike a blinding flash and an earth-shattering roar. Below, Poseidon's trident churns the seas into a furious maelstrom, sending colossal waves crashing against the shores of creation. And from the depths of Tartarus, the hundred-handed Cinemanes rain down mountains upon the Titan stronghold of Mount Othrys. It's a full-scale assault, a primal battle where the very landscape is weaponized. The Titans, despite their immense power, find themselves overwhelmed. Cronus, even with his scythe, cannot stand against the combined might and strategic cunning of the Olympians. One by one, the elder gods are subdued. The culmination of the war sees the defeated Titans, including Cronus, cast down into Tartarus, the very same abyss from which Zeus had freed the Cyclopes and Cinemanes. It's a grim, poetic justice. You can almost hear their pained roars echoing into the unfathomable depths, trapped for eternity within the prison they had once helped their father maintain. The Centimines are then appointed as their eternal jailers, ensuring no Titan ever again threatens the new cosmic order. This definitive victory marks the end of the Titans' reign and the undisputed rise of the Olympians. But the peace is short-lived. Gaia, the Earth, is not pleased with the fate of her Titan children. Remember, she brought them forth, and now they are imprisoned in her very core. She is still a powerful, brooding force, capable of unleashing new, terrifying challenges. You feel the ground beneath you rumble, not with the war of gods, but with the stirrings of a new, monstrous threat. From her primordial wrath, Gaia births the monstrous Typhon, the most terrifying creature in all of Greek mythology. Imagine a being so colossal that his head scrapes the stars, with 100 serpent heads, eyes that flash fire, and a voice that bellows with the sounds of every wild beast imaginable. He is a truly grotesque and formidable opponent, embodying the primal forces of chaos and destruction that even the Titans feared. This is not just a monster, it's a living natural disaster. It's a mainstream historical fact that Typhon represented the volcanic and seismic activity that frequently plagued the Mediterranean world, making him a very tangible and terrifying embodiment of nature's fury. Typhon immediately sets his sights on Olympus, intending to destroy the newly established order and reclaim supremacy for the older, chthonic forces. This is the Gigantomachy, a war against the giants, born from Auranes' blood, but now led by the terrifying Typhon. You watch as the newly crowned Olympians, fresh from their victory over the Titans, are once again forced into a desperate battle for their very existence. This time, the stakes feel even higher, as Typhon's monstrous form inspires true terror even in the hearts of gods. The Olympians, initially, are overwhelmed by Typhon's sheer power. Some even flee in fear, transforming into animals to escape his wrath. Zeus, however, stands firm. He confronts Typhon in a cataclysmic duel that makes the Titanomachy look like a polite disagreement. Lightning bolts rip through the sky, and the earth groans under the strain of their titanic struggle. Typhon, in a particularly unsettling move, manages to wound Zeus, even severing his sinews and hiding them away, crippling the king of the gods. You feel a pang of dread as Zeus, for a moment, is vulnerable, his power diminished. But Zeus is not defeated. With the help of Hermes and Egipan, often identified with Pan, who recover his sinews, Zeus regains his strength. The battle resumes, even more fiercely than before. Zeus pursues Typhon across the world, from Mount Casius in Syria to the plain of Nyssa, engaging him in relentless combat. This chase is a spectacular display of divine resilience. Finally, Zeus corners Typhon beneath Mount Etna, in Sicily. With a final, crushing series of thunderbolts, he pins the monster beneath the immense volcano. You can almost feel the ground shake and hear the monstrous roars of Typhon, forever trapped, breathing fire and causing earthquakes through the volcano's eruptions. This explains, in the ancient Greek worldview, the cause of volcanic activity. It's a quirky tidbit how effectively Greek mythology explained natural phenomena through compelling narratives. With Typhon imprisoned and the remaining giants either defeated or subdued, some say they became the very mountains. The Olympians can finally establish their undisputed rule. The cosmos is now, seemingly, at peace, with the new generation of gods firmly in control. Historians still argue whether the Gigantomachy was a later addition to the myth cycle or an integral part of the early establishment of Olympian power, symbolizing the triumph of civilized order over wild, untamed nature. Either way, the era of constant, existential threats finally seems to be at an end. For now, you are now settled into the reign of Zeus, the undisputed king of the gods, perched atop Mount Olympus. The chaotic birth pangs of the cosmos and the titanic wars are, for the moment, behind you. The air on Olympus is crisp and clear, filled with the scent of ambrosia and the distant sound of divine laughter. This is the era of the Olympian pantheon, the dominant force in Greek mythology, and Zeus is very much at its center, though perhaps not always in the way you might expect. Zeus, having overthrown his father and defended his throne, is the embodiment of power and authority. He wields the thunderbolt with unmatched precision, capable of striking down foes or simply making a very loud point. He is the god of the sky, thunder, and lightning, and is responsible for upholding order and justice among both gods and mortals. He is often depicted with a majestic beard, a regal bearing, and a gaze that could either bestow favor or incinerate. He's the ultimate boss, the head honcho, the guy who makes the rules, and occasionally breaks them, but we'll get to that. However, Zeus's reign is also defined by his notoriously turbulent personal life. Despite being married to his formidable sister, Hera, his marital fidelity was, shall we say, non-existent. You find yourself observing a parade of divine and mortal lovers, each encounter leading to new offspring and, invariably, new headaches for Hera. It's like a celestial soap opera, but with more transformations and less commercial breaks. His motivations for these affairs are as varied as his conquests. Sometimes pure lust, sometimes a desire to father powerful heroes, sometimes just because he felt like it. It's a very human trait, this pursuit of desire, even when you're an immortal king. Consider a few of his more notable escapades. There's Io, a mortal priestess whom Zeus pursued. To hide her from Hera, Zeus transformed Io into a beautiful white heifer. Hera, however, was not fooled and demanded the heifer as a gift, placing her under the watchful, hundred-eyed gaze of Argus Panoptes. It's a classic example of Zeus's cleverness being matched by Hera's relentless cunning. Then there's Europa, a Phoenician princess. Zeus, captivated by her beauty, transformed himself into a magnificent white bull to abduct her, carrying her across the sea to Crete. And, of course, Leda, the Spartan queen, whom he approached in the form of a swan, leading to the birth of Helen of Troy, Clytemnestra, Castor, and Pollux. These tales, far from being mere dalliances, often have profound consequences for the mortal world, intertwining divine narratives with human history. The sheer volume of Zeus's offspring is astonishing, both divine and mortal. Many of the heroes you'll encounter later in this story are his children, a testament to his prolific and problematic nature. This consistent procreation with various partners often leads to friction, not just with Hera, but also among the newly emerging generation of gods. It's a very large, very dysfunctional family, united by blood but often divided by loyalty and ambition. A mainstream historical fact here is that Zeus, despite his chaotic personal life, was also the god of justice and hospitality, xenia, an incredibly important concept in ancient Greek society. He was seen as the protector of suppliants and the punisher of those who violated oaths or mistreated guests. So, he wasn't just a philanderer, he had some pretty serious responsibilities too. Talk about a complex character. One quirky tidbit about Zeus is his association with the Aegis, a shield or breastplate often depicted as bearing the head of Medusa. It was a terrifying, fear-inducing object that no one could stand against. While Athena often carries it, it is fundamentally Zeus's possession, symbolizing his ultimate authority and protective power. Imagine going into battle and your opponent pulls out a shield that literally turns people to stone. Not ideal. Historians still argue whether Zeus's numerous affairs were simply reflections of human rulers' polygamy, or whether they represented the assimilation of various local cults and their deities into the overarching Olympian pantheon. Perhaps each affair was a mythological way of explaining how a particular local goddess or hero lineage became associated with the dominant Olympian worship. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? That behind the divine drama lies a very real, very human process of cultural integration. You are now intimately familiar with Zeus's rather expansive romantic resume, and by extension, you are feeling the full, simmering fury of Hera, his long-suffering and fiercely powerful wife. Imagine being the queen of the gods, the goddess of marriage and childbirth, only to have your husband consistently, spectacularly, and publicly betray your vows. Her rage isn't just a fleeting emotion, it's a fundamental aspect of her divine being, an eternal flame fueled by Zeus's relentless infidelity. You can almost feel the chill in the air when she enters a room, a tangible aura of divine indignation. Hera is, by nature, a goddess of great dignity, majesty, and unyielding loyalty, to herself and the sanctity of marriage, at least. She is depicted as regal, with a scepter and diadem, often accompanied by peacocks, symbols of her pride and beauty. But beneath that stately exterior lies a terrifying vindictiveness, especially towards Zeus's mortal paramours and their innocent offspring. She doesn't usually confront Zeus directly, choosing instead to unleash her wrath on those she perceives as responsible for her pain, which is, unfortunately for them, everyone but Zeus. It's a classic case of misplaced aggression, if that aggression involved turning people into cows or driving them insane. You witness her elaborate, often cruel, schemes unfold. Take the story of Leto, a Titaness pregnant with twins by Zeus. Hera, in a fit of rage, decreed that Leto could not give birth on any land touched by the sun. Imagine the despair of a pregnant goddess, eternally wandering, finding no solace or place to rest. Eventually, with the help of Poseidon, she found the floating island of Delos, which was not land in the traditional sense, and there she gave birth to Apollo and Artemis, two of the most powerful Olympian gods. Hera's decree was circumvented, but the suffering inflicted on Leto was immense. Then there's the tale of Semele, a mortal princess of Thebes and another of Zeus's paramours. Hera, disguised as an old nurse, befriended Semele and slyly planted seeds of doubt in her mind about her lover's true identity. She convinced Semele to ask Zeus to reveal himself in his full divine glory, knowing full well that no mortal could survive such a sight. Zeus, bound by an oath to grant Semele whatever she wished, unwillingly appeared to her in his thunderous, lightning-wielding form, instantly incinerating her. Zeus, however, managed to rescue their unborn child from Semele's ashes, sewing the infant into his thigh until it was ready to be born. This child was Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, a testament to Zeus's ability to, shall we say, improvise. It's a quirky tidbit that a god of wine literally sprouted from a god's thigh. Talk about a unique birth story. But perhaps Hera's most relentless persecution was reserved for Heracles, Hercules in Roman mythology, another of Zeus's mortal sons. From the moment of his conception, Hera sought to destroy him. She sent 2 serpents to his crib when he was an infant, only for the super-strong baby to strangle them. Throughout his life, she plagued him with trials, driving him to madness, which led him to kill his own family, thereby initiating his famous 12 labors. These labors, while making Heracles a legendary hero, were all indirectly products of Hera's implacable hatred. It's a mainstream historical fact that Heracles' trials and tribulations are directly attributable to Hera's wrath, demonstrating her immense power to influence even the mightiest of heroes. Historians still argue whether Hera's relentless vengeance against Zeus's lovers was primarily a moral statement about marital fidelity in a patriarchal society, or if it reflected the historical displacement of older, more powerful female deities by the patriarchal Olympian pantheon. with Hera embodying the resistance to this new order. Perhaps she represents the fury of a dethroned primal goddess, now subjugated in marriage. Her punishments were not always death. Sometimes they were eternal torment or grotesque transformations. She transformed the nymph Echo into just a voice, capable only of repeating the last words spoken to her, because Echo distracted Hera while Zeus was engaged in another affair. Her jealousy truly knew no bounds, demonstrating a very human flaw magnified to a divine scale. You learn that even gods, despite their immortality and power, are still deeply affected by emotions like resentment and vengefulness. And you thought your family drama was complicated. You've seen the king and queen of Olympus, Zeus and Hera, with all their immense power and equally immense personal drama. Now, let's widen your view and meet the rest of the Olympian pantheon, the core group of 12 powerful deities who reside on Mount Olympus. These are the gods and goddesses who, along with Zeus and Hera, shaped the world, influenced mortal lives, and became the central figures of Greek religion and myth. Imagine a very exclusive, very powerful, and occasionally very petty divine family reunion. First among them, naturally, is Zeus, the patriarch, god of the sky, lightning, and justice, whose thunderous presence you're already intimately familiar with. Alongside him is Hera, his queen, goddess of marriage and childbirth, perpetually simmering with a righteous and terrifying fury at his indiscretions. Then there's Poseidon, brother of Zeus and Hades, and lord of the sea, earthquakes, and horses. You can almost feel the salt spray and the rumble of the earth when he's near. He wields his mighty trident, capable of calming storms or conjuring devastating tidal waves. He's powerful, moody, and often tempestuous, much like the seas he commands. A quirky tidbit about Poseidon is that he was also considered the creator of horses, either by striking his trident on a rock or by mating with a mythical creature, which is a surprisingly terrestrial origin for a sea god. Next is Demeter, sister to Zeus, and the venerable goddess of agriculture, harvest, and fertility. She is the reason the crops grow, the seasons turn, and life flourishes. Her mood directly impacts the productivity of the earth. When she mourns, the land becomes barren, giving us the mythic explanation for winter. She is a vital, nurturing force, but capable of immense sorrow, particularly after her daughter Persephone's abduction. Hades, the eldest brother, drew the short straw, or rather, the lot, for the underworld. He is the grim, unyielding ruler of the dead, lord of wealth, from precious metals within the earth, and husband to Persephone. While often feared, he's not inherently evil, simply a stoic administrator of the afterlife. You won't find him often on Olympus. He's far too busy managing the countless souls that enter his gloomy domain. He's one of the few core gods who doesn't live on Olympus, but his power is undeniable. Then there's Athena, goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, handicrafts, and heroic endeavor. She famously sprang fully formed and armored from Zeus's head after he swallowed Metis, symbolizing her direct association with divine intellect. She is often depicted with an owl and a shield, a fierce and intelligent warrior, but one who prefers strategy over brute force. She's a formidable presence, always a step ahead. Apollo, twin brother of Artemis, is the radiant god of music, poetry, prophecy, healing, archery, and light. He is often associated with the sun, though Helios was the original sun god. You can almost hear the lyre music and feel the warmth of the sun when you consider his influence. He represents order, harmony, and the arts, a stark contrast to some of the more volatile Olympians. Artemis, Apollo's twin sister, is the fierce goddess of the hunt, wilderness, wild animals, and childbirth. She is a virgin goddess, often depicted with her bow and arrows, roaming the forests with her nymphs. She is fiercely independent and protective of nature, a wild and untamed spirit. It's a mainstream historical fact that her cult was incredibly popular, especially among young women and hunters, emphasizing her role in rites of passage. Ares is the god of brutal, unrestrained warfare, bloodlust, and violence. He is hot-headed, impulsive, and often defeated despite his might. He stands in stark contrast to Athena's strategic approach to battle. He's the raw, destructive force of conflict, and often not very well liked, even by his fellow gods. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation, uniquely born from the castrated Uranus's foam. Her presence radiates charm and allure. She has a complicated history, often being the cause of both great joy and immense strife. She embodies the irresistible, often disruptive, power of desire. Hephaestus, the lame god of blacksmiths, craftsmen, fire, and volcanoes. He was cast out by Hera, or Zeus, for his deformity, but is revered for his unparalleled skill in crafting weapons and magnificent objects for the gods. He's the ultimate artisan, often seen toiling in his fiery forge. His industriousness provides a quirky contrast to the often idle or warring gods. Finally, Hermes, the swift messenger of the gods, god of trade, travelers, athletes, thieves, and boundaries. With his winged sandals and caduceus, he moves effortlessly between the mortal and divine realms, a cunning and charming trickster. He's the ultimate communicator and intermediary. Historians still argue whether the specific number of 12 Olympians was a rigid concept from the very beginning, or if the Dodecatheon, 12 gods, varied over time and across different regions, with some gods occasionally being swapped in or out depending on local cult importance. It's a subtle shift, but it shows how fluid even a seemingly fundamental aspect of a pantheon can be. You've met the assembled might of the Olympians, now basking in their established dominion. But even in this golden age, new narratives unfold, often driven by the very titans they imprisoned. You're about to witness a pivotal moment in the relationship between gods and mortals, a moment that will forever shape humanity's fate, thanks to a bold act of defiance. This tale revolves around Prometheus, one of the second-generation titans, whose name means forethought. He was the son of Iapetus and Clymene, or Themis, and notably, he sided with Zeus during the Titanomachy. While many of his brethren were cast into Tartarus, Prometheus was spared, thanks to his intelligence and his early alliance with the Olympians. Prometheus, however, wasn't content to simply enjoy his freedom on Olympus. He had a profound fascination with mortals, the fledgling creatures that Gaia had spawned. Some myths even say he played a direct role in humanity's creation, molding them from clay and breathing life into them, perhaps with the help of Athena. This direct involvement in our origin story makes him a sort of cosmic benefactor, a divine guardian dedicated to humanity's well-being. Imagine him carefully shaping each human form, infusing them with the spark of life and intellect. It's a very hands-on approach to creation, isn't it? His compassion for humanity, however, put him on a collision course with Zeus. The gods had decreed that mortals must offer sacrifices to them, a way of acknowledging their supremacy and providing sustenance, in the form of the essence of burnt offerings. Prometheus, ever the clever one, devised a trick to benefit humanity. During a great feast where gods and mortals were to decide on the division of sacrifices, Prometheus presented 2 portions of an ox. One pile contained the meat and entrails, covered in the unappetizing hide. The other contained only bones, but cunningly wrapped in glistening, appetizing fat. He then invited Zeus to choose. Zeus, despite being the king of the gods, fell for the bait. He chose the pile of bones covered in fat, believing it to be the richer portion. When he discovered the trick, his divine fury was immense. He had been outsmarted by a mere titan, and in front of mortals no less. This act of deception, known as the trick at Mycone, became a turning point. It's a mainstream historical fact that this myth explains the Greek sacrificial practices, where the bones and fat were burned for the gods, while the meat was eaten by humans. It's a quirky tidbit that such a significant ritual stems from a divine prank. In retaliation for Prometheus's trick, Zeus withheld fire from mortals. This was a catastrophic blow. Without fire, humanity lived in a state of cold, darkness, and ignorance, unable to cook food, forge tools, or protect themselves from wild beasts. Imagine the desperation, the struggle for survival in a world suddenly deprived of this essential element. It's a fundamental regression, a stark reminder of humanity's fragility in the face of divine displeasure. But Prometheus, ever the champion of humanity, could not stand idly by. he resolved to steal fire back from mortals. You watch as he embarks on a perilous journey, ascending to the heavens. Some accounts say he lit a torch from the sun itself, while others say he stole a spark from the forge of Hephaestus. Either way, he cunningly hid the stolen flame within a hollow fennel stalk, a narthex staff, a seemingly innocuous plant, and brought it down to earth, gifting it back to humankind. The moment fire touched the mortal world, everything changed. Humans could cook, craft, and illuminate their lives, beginning their ascent from a primitive existence. This act was a profound gift, truly transformative. However, Zeus's wrath, when he discovered this second act of defiance, was unimaginable. He couldn't kill a fellow immortal, but he could inflict eternal, unimaginable suffering. For his transgression, Prometheus was chained to a pillar or rock in the Caucasus Mountains. Every day, an enormous eagle, a symbol of Zeus himself, would descend and tear out his liver, which would then regenerate overnight, only to be devoured again the next day. This unending torment was Zeus's cruel punishment for defying his will and empowering mortals. Historians still argue whether the myth of Prometheus primarily highlights divine punishment for hubris, or if it symbolizes the enduring struggle of knowledge and progress against oppressive authority. It's a deep philosophical question hidden within a gripping tale. This act of divine cruelty sets the stage for further interactions between gods and mortals, revealing the often harsh realities of living under the whims of powerful, unpredictable deities. Prometheus's defiant act, however, cements his place as a tragic hero, a martyr for humanity's progress. You are now in the immediate aftermath of Prometheus's audacious gift and Zeus's chilling punishment. But Zeus's vengeance wasn't limited to the Titan who dared defy him. It extended to the very recipients of that forbidden knowledge, humanity. You are about to witness the dawn of a new era for mortals, an age marked by both progress and profound suffering, ushered in by a particularly infamous gift. This is the story of Pandora's box, or more accurately, Pandora's jar. Zeus, still seething from Prometheus's deception and the theft of fire, decided to create a beautiful evil as a punishment for mankind. He enlisted the help of several other Olympians. Hephaestus, the master craftsman, molded her from earth and water, giving her a stunning, irresistible form. Athena breathed life into her, dressed her in fine robes, and taught her handicrafts. Aphrodite bestowed upon her beauty and charm. Hermes gave her cunning, deceit, and a persuasive tongue. Each god contributed a gift, making her truly all-gifted, which is what her name, Pandora, means. Imagine her stepping into the world, a creature of breathtaking beauty and dangerous curiosity, a living trap designed by the gods. She was the first woman ever created, marking a significant departure from the previous age where, in some accounts, only men existed. This is a mainstream historical fact, as Pandora's creation directly introduces the concept of woman into the human narrative in Greek mythology. Pandora was then sent to Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother, whose name means afterthought, a rather fitting choice, as he was known for acting impulsively and only considering consequences later. Prometheus had explicitly warned Epimetheus never to accept gifts from Zeus, foreseeing some divine trickery. However, Epimetheus, charmed by Pandora's beauty and unaware of the ominous nature of her arrival, disregarded his brother's warning and welcomed her. Along with Pandora, Zeus sent a large jar, often mistranslated as a box in later retellings, with a strict instruction: it was never, under any circumstances, to be opened. You can almost feel the tension building, the irresistible pull of forbidden knowledge that Pandora was imbued with. The combination of her divine curiosity and the tantalizing mystery of the jar was a recipe for disaster. Despite the warnings and her husband's initial attempts to keep the jar sealed, Pandora's curiosity eventually overwhelmed her. You watch as she succumbs to the irresistible urge. With trembling hands, she lifts the lid. And in that fateful moment, all the ills, sorrows, plagues, miseries, diseases, and hardships that had previously been unknown to humanity came rushing out into the world. Imagine a black, swirling cloud of despair and suffering engulfing the once idyllic existence of mortals. Before this moment, Humanity had lived a life of relative ease, free from sickness and toil. This act ushers in a new, much harsher reality. Pandora, horrified by what she had unleashed, quickly slammed the lid shut. But it was too late. Only one thing remained trapped inside the jar, fluttering desperately: Elpis, or hope. This small, shimmering entity, left behind amidst the devastation, became the sole comfort for suffering humanity. It's a quirky tidbit that hope, that most ephemeral of human emotions, was the only thing that didn't escape, making it both a blessing and, perhaps, a subtle form of continued divine punishment. For without hope, how could one endure the ills? Historians still argue whether the presence of hope in the jar was a final benevolent act by Zeus, providing solace amidst suffering, or a cruel twist, ensuring that humans would cling to a belief in future betterment, thus enduring their woes. This myth explains the origin of suffering, disease, and all the negative aspects of the human condition. It marks the decline from a supposed golden age, where mortals lived in harmony with the gods, without toil or sorrow, to the silver and bronze ages, filled with hardship, conflict, and eventual destruction. You can feel the weight of this newly introduced burden on humanity. The world becomes a harder, more challenging place, necessitating innovation, resilience, and a new understanding of what it means to be human. The relationship between gods and mortals has fundamentally shifted. No longer is it an era of direct, easy interaction. Now, the gods observe, sometimes intervene, but often allow humanity to struggle with the consequences of their actions and the new realities of their existence. The gift of fire brought progress, but Pandora's jar brought the price. You have witnessed the shift in humanity's fortunes, from a state of relative ease to one plagued by the myriad ills unleashed by Pandora. Now, with the world a harsher, more challenging place, it is time to turn our gaze to the mortals who navigated this new reality. Heroes whose incredible deeds and harrowing journeys carved their names into the very fabric of Greek mythology. These are the figures who often bridge the gap between the divine and the mortal, frequently born of a god and a human, and tasked with achieving feats no ordinary human could even dream of. Their stories are a testament to courage, strength, and often profound suffering. Let's begin with Perseus, a hero whose story involves a rather unfortunate oracle and a truly monstrous encounter. His grandfather, King Acrisius of Argos, received a prophecy that he would be killed by his own grandson. In a desperate attempt to thwart fate, he imprisoned his daughter, Danae, in a bronze tower. But Zeus, ever resourceful and persistent, visited Danae in the form of a shower of gold, and thus Perseus was conceived. When Acrisius discovered the infant, he cast Danae and the baby Perseus adrift in a wooden chest on the sea, hoping fate would simply take its course. They landed on the island of Seriphos, where they were rescued. Years later, an arrogant king named Polydectes, desiring Danae, sought to get rid of the now-grown Perseus. He tricked Perseus into promising to bring him the head of Medusa, one of the three Gorgon sisters. Medusa was a terrifying monster with venomous snakes for hair, and anyone who looked directly into her eyes would be turned to stone. This seemingly impossible task was intended to be Perseus's demise, but Perseus was favored by the gods. Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, provided him with a highly polished bronze shield, which he could use as a mirror to look at Medusa indirectly. Hermes, the messenger god, gave him winged sandals, allowing him to fly, and a curved sword capable of severing Medusa's head. With the help of the Graeae, three ancient sisters who shared one eye and one tooth, Perseus learned the location of the nymphs who possessed other magical artifacts: Hades' Helm of Darkness, making him invisible, and a magical pouch to safely carry Medusa's head. You envision Perseus floating invisibly above Medusa as she sleeps, carefully using the shield to guide his blow. With one swift, decisive swing of his sword, he severs her head. From her neck sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant. Perseus then made his escape, turning adversaries to stone with Medusa's head on his journey home. A mainstream historical fact is that the image of Medusa's head was frequently depicted on ancient Greek shields and breastplates, known as a gorgonion, for its apotropaic, evil averting, power. It's a pretty effective way to intimidate your enemies. Upon his return, Perseus fulfilled the prophecy, albeit unintentionally. At an athletic contest, he threw a discus that accidentally struck and killed Acrisius, his grandfather. It's a testament to the inescapable nature of fate in Greek mythology. Now, let's turn to Heracles, the demigod son of Zeus and Alcmene, whom you know Hera relentlessly persecuted. His life was a series of trials and impossible feats, beginning with the madness inflicted by Hera that led him to kill his own wife and children. To atone for this horrific act, the Oracle of Delphi commanded him to serve King Eurystheus of Tiryns for 12 years, undertaking whatever labors the king demanded. These were the legendary 12 labors of Heracles, each designed to be insurmountable. You witness his strength and perseverance through these monumental tasks. He strangled the Nemean lion with his bare hands, its hide becoming his impenetrable cloak. He battled the many-headed Lernaean hydra, whose heads regrew when cut, requiring him to cauterize the stumps. He captured the swift Ceryneian hind and the monstrous Erymanthian boar. He famously cleaned the Augean stables, which hadn't been cleaned in 30 years, by diverting 2 rivers through them. This particular labor, a quirky tidbit, highlights his cleverness as well as his brute strength, as he used engineering rather than pure force. His labors continued. He defeated the Stymphalian birds, captured the Cretan bull, and rounded up the mares of Diomedes. He obtained the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, and the cattle of the monster Geryon. His penultimate task was to retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides, a task so difficult he needed the help of Atlas to briefly hold up the sky. Finally, his ultimate labor was to descend into the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the 3-headed dog that guarded its gates. Historians still argue whether the 12 labors were originally a cohesive cycle or a collection of disparate local myths later formalized into a single narrative. Regardless, Heracles stands as the quintessential Greek hero, embodying strength, endurance, and the capacity for both great good and terrible mistakes. His journey is a grueling saga of atonement, a constant battle against both external monsters and his own internal demons. He is, in many ways, the ultimate example of the harsh existence humanity faced, even with divine parentage, in the age following Pandora's release. You have traversed the landscape of heroic deeds, witnessing the extraordinary strength and cunning of figures like Perseus and Heracles. Now, prepare yourself for a conflict of monumental scale, one that involved not just mortals, but nearly every major god and goddess, and whose echoes still reverberate through literature and legend today. You are about to plunge into the heart of the Trojan War, a conflict sparked by a single act of love, betrayal, and a particularly ill-fated beauty contest. The story begins, in a way, with a wedding, that of Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis, parents of the great hero Achilles. All the gods were invited, except for Eris, the goddess of discord. Naturally, Eris was offended. In a fit of pique, she tossed a golden apple inscribed to the fairest into the wedding feast. This seemingly innocuous act immediately sparked a furious argument among Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each claiming the apple for herself. Zeus, unwilling to directly judge his powerful family members, wisely, or perhaps cowardly, deferred the decision to a mortal, Paris, the Prince of Troy. Paris, who was tending sheep on Mount Ida, was visited by Hermes, who presented the 3 goddesses and the apple. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe. Hera promised him political power and kingship, Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle, and Aphrodite offered him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris, being a young man with understandably strong priorities, chose Aphrodite. This choice had devastating consequences. The most beautiful woman in the world was Helen, unfortunately already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. With Aphrodite's aid, Paris traveled to Sparta, where he was hospitably received by Menelaus. However, while Menelaus was away, Paris, either through seduction or abduction, the exact nature of Helen's departure is a mainstream historical fact that remains debated by scholars, ranging from willing elopement to forced kidnapping, spirited Helen away to Troy. This act, the abduction of Helen, was an unforgivable offense against the sacred laws of hospitality, Xenia, and a profound insult to Menelaus and his brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae. Menelaus, enraged and humiliated, rallied the kings and heroes of Greece, invoking a prior oath they had all sworn to protect Helen's marriage. This assembled force became the Achaeans, or Greeks. They gathered an immense fleet and army, sailing across the Aegean Sea to besiege the mighty city of Troy, a formidable, well-fortified city in Asia Minor. The siege was no quick affair. It lasted for 10 long years. You find yourself on the dusty plains outside the towering walls of Troy, witnessing the epic struggle. The war was characterized by numerous individual duels, acts of heroism, divine interventions, and immense casualties. The gods themselves were deeply involved, taking sides and often directly influencing the outcome of battles. Hera and Athena, still furious over Paris's judgment, fiercely supported the Achaeans. Aphrodite, of course, championed the Trojans, as did Apollo and Artemis. Zeus attempted to remain neutral, but often found himself swayed by various appeals and divine politics. It's a bit like watching a celestial wrestling match, with humanity as the pawns. Many legendary figures emerged during this prolonged conflict. On the Achaean side, there was the peerless warrior Achilles, whose wrath and withdrawal from battle due to a slight from Agamemnon almost cost the Greeks the war. There was Odysseus, the cunning and resourceful king of Ithaca, known for his clever strategies. And on the Trojan side, the noble Hector, prince of Troy, the city's greatest champion, who fought bravely despite knowing his city's doomed fate. The war reached a stalemate, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. The Trojan walls seemed impregnable. After 10 years of fighting, it was the cunning of Odysseus that finally broke the deadlock. He devised the ingenious plan of the Trojan horse. You see the Achaeans build an enormous wooden horse, ostensibly as an offering to Athena, and then pretend to sail away, leaving the horse outside the gates of Troy. The Trojans, believing it to be a sign of victory and a gift, dragged the colossal horse inside their city walls. This quirky tidbit of military strategy is one of the most famous parts of the myth. Under the cover of night, a select group of Achaean warriors, who had been hiding inside the horse, emerged. They opened the city gates, allowing the waiting Achaean army, who had secretly returned, to pour into Troy. The city, previously impenetrable, was now vulnerable from within. The ensuing slaughter was brutal and swift. Troy fell, its palaces burned, and its people were either killed or enslaved. Helen was eventually reunited with Menelaus, though their journey home would also be fraught with peril. Historians still argue whether the Trojan War itself was a purely mythological event, or if it had a basis in a historical conflict during the Bronze Age, perhaps a series of raids or a protracted siege, later greatly embellished by epic poetry. Archaeological excavations at Hazarlik, modern-day Turkey, have revealed evidence of a city that fits the description of Troy, showing multiple layers of destruction, fueling this debate. Regardless of its historical veracity, the myth of the Trojan War remains a powerful narrative about human hubris, divine intervention, and the devastating consequences of conflict. You have witnessed the fiery demise of Troy, a city brought low by cunning and divine intervention, its proud walls breached by the infamous wooden horse. But for many of the victorious Achaean heroes, the journey home was far from easy. The gods, still capricious and easily offended, had a few more trials in store. You are now embarking on one of the most famous and perilous homeward journeys in all of mythology. Odysseus's long and arduous return, a testament to human resilience, cunning, and the enduring power of longing for home. Our hero is Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, the very man who conceived the Trojan horse. He is renowned not for his brute strength, like Achilles, but for his métis, his cunning, intelligence, and resourcefulness. You see him as a survivor, a storyteller, and a leader driven by a singular purpose: to return to his beloved wife, Penelope, and his son, Telemachus. His journey, known as the Odyssey, is a sprawling epic of 10 years, adding to the 10 years he already spent at Troy. That's 20 years away from home. Imagine the accumulated mail. The wrath of the gods, particularly Poseidon, was a major factor in Odysseus's prolonged suffering. Odysseus had blinded Poseidon's son, the Cyclops Polyphemus, during an earlier stop. This act of violence against a divine offspring ignited the sea god's furious vengeance, who relentlessly churned the seas and conjured storms to prevent Odysseus from reaching Ithaca. You can feel the constant struggle against the raging elements, the ship being tossed about like a toy, the spray of the relentless waves. You sail alongside Odysseus and his weary crew as they encounter a series of fantastical and terrifying obstacles. First, they face the Lotus Eaters, whose magical fruit caused forgetfulness and a desire to remain in blissful oblivion. Odysseus had to physically drag his men back to the ship, reminding you that sometimes the greatest dangers are self-imposed. Then came the infamous encounter with Polyphemus, the one-eyed giant Cyclops. Trapped in his cave, Odysseus, with his cunning, got the Cyclops drunk on potent wine, then blinded him with a heated stake. To escape, he and his men clung to the bellies of Polyphemus's sheep as the blind giant let them out to pasture. It's a mainstream historical fact that this episode perfectly showcases Odysseus's defining characteristic, his métis, cunning intelligence, triumphing over brute force. Their journey continues to the island of Aeolia, where Aeolus, the god of winds, kindly traps all the unfavorable winds in a bag, giving it to Odysseus with strict instructions not to open it. But Odysseus's curious and distrustful crew, believing it contained treasure, opened the bag, unleashing a tempest that blew them all the way back to Aeolia. Talk about a self-inflicted wound. They then faced the monstrous Laestrygonians, cannibalistic giants who destroy almost all of Odysseus's fleet. Only his ship and a handful of men escape. Next, they arrive at the island of Circe, a powerful sorceress who turns men into pigs. Odysseus, protected by an herb given by Hermes, resists her magic and forces her to turn his men back. He remains with her for a year, learning valuable navigational and prophetic information. It's a quirky tidbit that a formidable hero like Odysseus would spend an entire year lounging with a sorceress, highlighting the seductive nature of distraction from one's primary goal. Circe advises him to visit the underworld to consult the prophet Tiresias. You descend with him into the gloomy realm of Hades, where he performs a ritual to summon the shades of the dead, seeking guidance for his journey home. This harrowing experience brings him face to face with fallen comrades and his own mother, adding a layer of poignant introspection to his quest. Upon returning from the underworld, they must navigate the treacherous waters between Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla is a six-headed monster who snatches sailors from their ships, while Charybdis is a monstrous whirlpool that swallows ships whole. Odysseus skillfully guides his ship, sacrificing a few men to Scylla to avoid the total destruction of Charybdis. Their final major stop before a devastating shipwreck is the island of Thrinacia, where the sacred cattle of the sun god Helios graze. Despite Odysseus's dire warnings, his famished crew, unable to resist, slaughter and eat some of the cattle. Helios, enraged, demands retribution from Zeus, who then sends a thunderbolt to destroy Odysseus's last ship, leaving him the sole survivor. Washed ashore on the island of Ogygia, Odysseus is held captive for 7 years by the beautiful nymph Calypso, who offers him immortality if he stays. But Odysseus, ever longing for his home and family, refuses. Eventually, with divine intervention from Athena and Zeus, Hermes is sent to command Calypso to release him. He then builds a raft and, after a final, violent storm sent by Poseidon, washes ashore on the land of the Phaeacians, who finally provide him passage home to Ithaca. Historians still argue whether the Odyssey is simply a collection of ancient folk tales woven together, or if it represents a deeper allegorical journey of the human soul seeking its true spiritual home. Regardless, it is a timeless narrative of perseverance, temptation, and the enduring human desire for belonging. You feel the immense relief as Odysseus, after 2 decades, finally sets foot on his homeland, though his trials are not quite over. You have followed Odysseus on his epic, 10-year journey home, finally witnessing his return to Ithaca after 2 decades of perilous adventures. But the tales of heroes and their struggles, both during life and after, lead us to a final, inescapable destination, the underworld, the shadowy realm of the dead ruled by Hades. This isn't a cheerful place, obviously, but it's a meticulously organized one, reflecting the Greek belief in an afterlife, albeit one often characterized by shades and shadows rather than heavenly bliss. Imagine descending into the earth, deeper and deeper, until all light fades. You arrive at the entrance to the underworld, a gloomy, foreboding place. The boundary between the living and the dead is marked by several rivers, the most famous being the River Styx, across which the souls of the deceased are ferried by the grim boatman, Charon. To pay for passage, the dead needed a coin placed under their tongue when they were buried. It's a quirky tidbit that such a practical detail, a sort of ancient fairy tale, was considered essential for a smooth journey to the afterlife. Without it, souls were condemned to wander the riverbanks forever. Once across the Styx, you encounter the three-headed dog, Cerberus, whom Heracles famously subdued. He guards the gates, preventing the living from entering and the dead from leaving. Beyond him lies the vast and varied landscape of the underworld, not a single undifferentiated space, but a realm with distinct regions. The rulers of this dominion are Hades himself, the stoic and unyielding god of the dead, and his queen, Persephone. Remember, Persephone was abducted by Hades with Zeus's reluctant permission, and her mother Demeter's grief plunged the world into barrenness. Her annual return to the world above brings spring and summer, while her descent back to Hades brings winter, explaining the seasons. She is a queen of the dead, but also a symbol of rebirth and agricultural fertility. Within the underworld, you find various areas where souls reside, reflecting the Greek belief that one's afterlife was not necessarily a reward or punishment, but rather a continuation of existence in a diminished form. Most souls went to the vast, gloomy fields of asphodel meadows. This is where the majority of ordinary people, neither particularly virtuous nor exceptionally wicked, spent eternity. Imagine them wandering aimlessly, like pale reflections of their former selves, without passion or purpose. It's a rather depressing concept of eternity, isn't it? Just existing endlessly. For the truly virtuous and heroic, there were the Elysian Fields, or Elysium. This was a paradise, a beautiful and peaceful realm of eternal spring, where heroes and the favored few enjoyed a blessed existence. Imagine lush greenery, soft breezes, and a perpetual feast. It was the closest thing to heaven in Greek mythology, a reward for those who lived exceptionally righteous lives or performed extraordinary deeds. Odysseus himself encountered heroes here during his catabasis, descent into the underworld. Conversely, for those who committed heinous crimes against the gods or against humanity, there was Tartarus. This isn't just the general underworld. It's the deepest, darkest, and most miserable pit, a prison of eternal torment. This is where the defeated titans were imprisoned, guarded by the Cenomanes. Here, you witnessed some of the most famous punishments. Sisyphus, eternally pushing a boulder uphill, only for it to roll back down just as it reaches the top, a mainstream historical fact representing feudal labor. Tantalus, standing in a pool of water with fruit trees above him, forever tormented by hunger and thirst, as the water recedes when he tries to drink and the fruit branches move away when he tries to eat. This gave us the word tantalize. Ixion, bound to a flaming, eternally spinning wheel for attempting to seduce Hera. These are not just punishments. They are symbolic representations of unending suffering, tailored to the specific sin. Historians still argue whether the concept of individual moral judgment and corresponding reward/punishment in the afterlife was an original feature of early Greek belief or developed later, perhaps influenced by mystery cults or philosophical thought. The underworld also included the Erebus, the primordial darkness through which the dead passed to reach Hades' realm, and the house of Hades itself, the palace where the king and queen of the dead resided. It's a vast, complex bureaucracy of the deceased, overseen by a silent but supremely powerful monarch. The Greek concept of the afterlife, unlike some later Abrahamic traditions, was not primarily focused on divine judgment leading to a binary heaven or hell. Instead, it offered a nuanced view of existence after death, shaped by one's actions, but often leading to a rather subdued, shadowy continuation of being. You leave this realm with a deep appreciation for the living world, for its colors, its sounds, and its fleeting joys, knowing what awaits beyond the veil. You have journeyed through the vast and often tumultuous landscape of Greek mythology, from the swirling void of chaos to the shadowy depths of the underworld. You've witnessed cosmic wars, divine dramas, heroic quests, and the tragic consequences of mortal folly and divine wrath. But as you emerge from the depths of Hades' realm and return to the sunlit world, it's time to consider something profound. How these ancient stories, born from the imaginations of people thousands of years ago, continue to resonate, inspire, and shape our understanding of the world even today. This is the enduring legacy and cultural impact of Greek mythology. These myths are far more than just quaint bedtime stories. They are foundational narratives that have profoundly influenced Western civilization in countless ways. A mainstream historical fact is that Greek mythology provided the bedrock for much of ancient Greek religion, literature, and art, shaping their worldview and giving meaning to their existence. Their gods explained natural phenomena, human emotions, and the moral order of the universe. Think about the sheer volume of literature that draws directly from these myths. From the epic poems of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, which you've briefly touched upon, to the tragedies of Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, Greek mythology provided the plots, characters, and themes that explored universal human experiences: love, loss, betrayal, heroism, hubris, and fate. These plays are still performed and studied today, demonstrating the timeless power of these narratives. They explored complex moral dilemmas, making audiences grapple with questions that remain relevant. Beyond literature, Greek mythology infused art and architecture. You see its influence in countless sculptures, paintings, and frescoes throughout history, depicting gods, heroes, and mythical beasts. Even the very structure of classical architecture, with its columns and pediments, often featured mythological scenes. Imagine walking into a grand building and seeing Zeus thundering down from the heavens, or Athena in battle. This visual language was instantly recognizable and deeply meaningful to ancient audiences. The impact extends far beyond ancient times. During the Renaissance, there was a massive revival of interest in classical antiquity, and Greek myths were rediscovered and reinterpreted by artists like Botticelli and Michelangelo. Later, composers like Gluck and Monteverdi turned these stories into operas, giving them a new voice. Even in the modern era, these myths continue to be adapted and reimagined in popular culture. Think of Hollywood blockbusters, fantasy novels, video games, and even superhero comics. Many draw directly from the archetypes and narrative structures established by Greek mythology. The idea of a powerful, flawed pantheon, of heroes with tragic destinies, of journeys fraught with monsters and temptation. It's all there, still echoing from ancient Greece. Consider the language we use every day. We speak of an Achilles heel to denote a fatal weakness, a Herculean task for something incredibly difficult, or a Midas touch for someone who turns everything into gold. We describe someone narcissistic from the myth of Narcissus, a journey as an odyssey, or a state of confusion as a labyrinthine problem. These are not just clever metaphors. They are direct linguistic legacies of these ancient tales, a quirky tidbit showing how deeply ingrained mythology is in our very communication. Even in the scientific world, the influence is undeniable. Planets, constellations, and geological features are named after Greek gods and mythical figures: Mars, Ares, Venus, Aphrodite, Neptune, Poseidon, the constellation Orion, the Titan Saturn, Cronus. The field of psychology uses terms like the Oedipus complex or the Electra complex. It's a testament to the enduring power of these character archetypes and narratives to explain complex human behaviors and phenomena. Historians still argue whether the primary role of Greek myths was didactic, to teach moral lessons, ideological, to explain natural phenomena or cultural practices, or simply entertainment. Perhaps it was all three, interwoven into a rich tapestry that served multiple purposes for the people who created and lived by these stories. These myths provided a framework for understanding their world, their gods, and themselves. They grappled with universal questions: the nature of power, the limits of human ambition, the inevitability of fate, and the complexities of love and war. You can see how these tales offer profound insights into the human condition, even across millennia. They remind us that human beings, regardless of time or place, struggle with similar emotions, ambitions, and fears. They highlight the enduring fascination with the powerful and the divine, and our perpetual quest for meaning in a chaotic world. The vast narrative tapestry of Greek mythology, with all its gods, monsters, heroes, and tragedies, provides a mirror through which we can still examine our own lives and societies. Its echoes are everywhere, if you just listen closely enough. Now, as your journey through the mythical landscapes of ancient Greece draws to a close, let your mind drift from the epic battles and divine interventions. The thunder of Zeus, the roar of the Cyclops, the creak of the Trojan horse. Let those sounds soften, fading into the quiet hum of your room. You've walked with gods, sailed with heroes, and peered into the abyss. And now it's time to let the echoes settle. The grand narratives, the grander dramas, they've played their part for tonight. Feel the gentle weight of your blanket, the soft pillow beneath your head. The stories have been told, the lessons whispered, and the long journey is done. There's nothing left to do but let the final threads of this ancient tapestry unravel in your mind. The colossal figures of the past are receding, their voices growing fainter, their conflicts dissolving into the quiet dark. All that remains is the soft, rhythmic drift of your own breathing. Let yourself sink deeper into the comfort of your bed, heavier, softer. There are no more trials, no more quests, just the deep, peaceful stillness of the night. Your thoughts are growing hazy, blending into the quiet. Just rest now. You are safe, and the long, long story is complete.